Hi, I'm Glenn Tinley with Winnipeg Men Magazine and Marketplace Magazine, and I'm here for our second in the series with our Premier, Mr. Greg Selinger.
Pleased to see you again, Glenn.
Thank you for having us out again. We appreciate the fact that you let us come in for these unscripted chats, which a lot of the times, I was saying to someone earlier, you read snippets, and of course politicians and everybody would love to be able to get their message out all the time, but the media is sort of grabs bits and pieces all the time, which you kind of love or don't love, and we like the fact that we just like to be able to have a talk and let you sort of talk about things. So let's start today with what has sort of been on everybody's mind, or a lot of people's minds, and what people are talking about is the stadium deal.
Yeah.
The city passed it last week in council. There's been lots of talk about, and I myself have spoken about, because I'm still trying to figure out how this is going to all come to fruition and how this is going to work. $190 million stadium that is basically going to become publicly funded, portion of the Bombers, and how it's all going to work. But maybe just...
Well, it's a $190 million stadium. 80% of the money will come from the Bombers and the private investment, which will generate new revenues, new tax revenues out of redeveloping Polo Park.
Okay.
So 85 million from the Bombers, 75 million from redevelopment of Polo Park. People need to know that Polo Park right now, where the existing stadium is, generates zero tax revenues.
Okay.
So it's really not being used at its highest and best use, and it's pretty widely acknowledged that that's a very attractive site for future investment.
Sure.
Retail, commercial, potentially some condominiums, etc.
Yeah, we've talked to the mayor about it, his thought on housing and different...
Right, so a mixed use is the idea. And so that should generate a bigger economic pie for Manitoba, because there'll be investment there. Probably will be over $200 million of private investment go there. Okay. So that'll generate a lot of economic opportunities and spin-offs as well. The remaining 30 million, so there's 85, 75, the remaining 30 that gives you the 190 comes from government directly.
Okay.
And that allows us to relocate the stadium from where it is now. And most people admit that that stadium is pretty much at the end of its useful life. It's served us extremely well over the last 5 decades, but the reality is it's a lot more investment is required to keep it in good shape, and it wouldn't give you that much more lifetime. And I like to describe it as sort of that decision you make when you have the old car. At one point you have to stop deciding to pour the money into the old car and go with a new one. Right. I think we're at that stage with the stadium. The new one will be at the University of Manitoba. It will accommodate not only the Bombers, which everybody's heard about, but it'll also accommodate the Bisons, who also have a very old stadium, well over 40 years old, which is also in rough shape. So we're kind of getting a classic Winnipeg 2-for-1 deal. Okay. It'll also be available to the community, and it'll be available for amateur sport as well, because there will be a soft dome on it, which will allow the facility to be used all year round. So, when you take a look at other jurisdictions that are still struggling to solve this problem, Saskatchewan is talking about a $400 million facility that they haven't figured out how to pay for yet. Yeah. Hamilton's trying to figure out what to do with their stadium. They haven't figured it out yet. Ottawa's been moving on a redevelopment of a stadium, a major sort of commercial stadium project down where the existing facility is, which is, I think, in the $500 million range that they're talking about a total redevelopment of there. I think we're well positioned to move Manitoba forward with a good quality facility that'll serve the whole community and allow the Bombers to be a viable business and community-owned team for many decades to come. And part of the outcome of this is that the Bombers will stay a community-owned team. And I think that will allow them to continue to reach out to the community and build the fan base and broaden their ability to appeal to all Manitobans for the product they put on the field.
So I have 3 sort of aspects to it. One, there was $15 million federal, when the announcement was first made, I think back in March. What happened to that $15 million?
The feds were always reluctant to attach it specifically to the stadium.
Right.
So there's $15 million that will go into a fitness facility at the University of Manitoba.
And that's still there?
It's still there, part it's of separate, it's not part of the same building, but it'll be in the University of Manitoba campus area.
Okay.
Yeah. So that stays as well. The feds have been kind of reluctant to get into professional or any kind of major sporting facilities. They've got pressure out of Quebec City for an arena.
Well, I'm assuming it's a Pandora's box, right? If you give Winnipeg X, then Saskatchewan and everybody else is going to come calling.
But
right?
what you have to decide is whether it leverages some significant economic activity and good assets for the country. In our case, we knew that we would be getting a big ask to pour money into the existing facility. We knew that we're getting big asks from the University of Manitoba to rebuild their facilities. So by combining it together, That opens up Polo Park for redevelopment. The site at the University of Manitoba was never going to be commercial retail. It always had to be institutional space for the university. So it allows that. Now we have a University of Manitoba Stadium that will be, first class for the whole country. It'll allow us to attract students. It'll allow us to say we're right up there with McGill and the University of Calgary, which has McMahon Stadium. We'll have a stadium probably nicer than what they've got, and I'm not in any way putting down what they do.
No, but theirs was built how many years ago?
Ours will be newer, it'll be modern, it'll be a bowl design with closed off ends. It's an oval. It'll have good access for persons with disabilities, elevators and escalators, much more comfortable seating, more leg room. I mean, one thing that's happened over the last 50 years, fans have gotten bigger, taller, larger, so there'll be more leg room for people. It'll have very nice amenities in terms of the kinds of things you can buy at the concessions, et cetera.
Okay.
So we think it'll position the Bombers to be successful decades to come. We think it'll position the university to be able to attract and retain good students and good amateur athletes. We think it'll serve the community well as well.
What, revenues from the concessions and parking and different, will those go to the team to help them service that debt?
The Bombers have put a business plan together, and they'll probably roll it out this week as we speak, all the details of that. But
Christmas Eve at 6 o'clock?
I hope not, but I think actually tomorrow they're seriously talking about doing some show and tell for the media. But the reality is they've put a business plan together that, based on the revenues the new stadium will generate and prudent assumptions in their view, will allow them to have a viable team. They want to be able to have a better facility, and they also want to be able to invest on the on-field talent to have a more competitive team. So they think that this project will allow them to do both of those things.
So who then is going to, I'm judging by what you're saying, you're sort of, the ball is now, no pun intended, the ball is now in the Bombers' field. Is that they're going to come up with a design, or are they going to?
The design's already done.
So the design's going to
the
basically
tendering has been done. I mean, what we've been working on is to finalize the tenders for the facility. The design
to lock in pricing.
To lock in pricing, guaranteed maximum price contract is what the objective is to get that 190 locked down. Now, there's always, exceptions for acts of God and some of the unforeseen things that come up, but it's a very solid price based on the tenders that have gone out there. And the tenders, as long as there's an agreement to proceed before Christmas, most of those tenders will get locked in. I think they'll all get locked in. So the project will go ahead for the $190 million. It will allow the project to be built now at a time when borrowing rates are low, and it'll also generate a significant amount of employment in the community. There'll be 2,400 years of employment opportunities there. So it'll employ, at different times in the building of it, it'll employ a couple hundred people plus working away on building this facility. So it gives a boost to the economy. It gives employment. It gives a quality facility for the university and the Bisons, as well as the Bombers, and it'll have community use to it as well. So amateur sport will benefit, the whole community will benefit, and we'll avoid the tens of millions of dollars that we're going to be inevitably required to keep the existing stadium in good shape.
Yeah, because I guess when I look at it as sort of a business person as well as a taxpayer, it's borrowed money. Like, we have to go out and borrow it. The province, unfortunately, doesn't have it in the kitty.
That's right.
So we have to go out and borrow it to do this. And that's where I sort of struggle is, geez, we got roads that,
but that's where you have to understand that the financing is the key to this. 80% of the money to pay for the borrowing will come off the Bombers business plan for $85 million, and off the redevelopment of Polo Park, which will stimulate much more private investment in Winnipeg. So we're growing the economy here. So in that sense, it doesn't compete with money that would go to existing schools or highways, because it's new money. It's new tax revenues. The existing site of Polo Park pays zero taxes. When it's redeveloped, it'll pay, somewhere north of $7 million of taxes. So it's
to the province?
To the province and to the city.
Yeah.
And that money will be used to pay down the $75 million part of the stadium that money has been dedicated to under what they call tax increment financing. It'll allow that site to be redeveloped, and once that's paid off, then that money will be permanently available for the community through the different levels of government.
Is this still going to, at time there was going to be into the tax zone?
Tax increment financing zone.
So the but that's still going to fit into there?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the tax increment financing legislation is very commonly used in North America. Manitoba is one of the first to adopt it, but it allows older sites to be redeveloped, because one of the challenges of older sites. And we're doing this downtown right now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, across from MTS Center, that whole block is.
Exactly,
is-
that whole building down there is being redeveloped as housing. So the tax increment financing allows you to advance some of the projected tax revenues that the new project will earn into making the project viable up front,
Yeah.
and then recovers it after the project is built. And that's what's gonna happen at Polo Park. It's a way to get ahead of the curve and redevelop older, what they call brownfield sites,
Mhm.
or downtown sites. In the case of the one across from the NPS Center, it's the old Avenue building. And the Avenue
Yeah.
building is gonna generate downtown housing for people to live downtown, which we all know is desirable, is to have more full-time residents living downtown.
Yeah, okay. Well, it'll be interesting to see how it all sort of plays out.
Yeah.
It's a massive project. It's, you know, there's pros and cons to anything, I guess.
There is,
And-
but I think what we have to remember is that we had, and I was asked this before, what's the biggest risk? The biggest risk is doing nothing. The
Mhm.
do nothing option was gonna send us a big bill for fixing up the existing stadium at Polo Park for the Bombers. It was gonna send us a big bill for fixing up the stadium at the University of Manitoba. By combining them together, we solve two problems at once. We generate an opportunity at Polo Park, which is a Class A development site,
Yeah,
for more real estate development. We allow the Bombers to have a stronger business plan for the future based on what the new facility will generate and the opportunities they will have there. So that 80% of the new stadium will come off of new money being generated by the Bombers and Polo Park. And what the governments are putting in, around $30 million, we should easily make that back off the multiplier effect of these new projects. Off Polo Park and off the university construction, we'll make that back on the taxes we generate by doing all those projects.
yeah,
So I think it's good for the community. And that's where this instrument of tax increment financing has been used in the United States, because it generates a bigger economic pie to the benefit of the whole community.
and I'll only throw one barb into
Sure.
the tax increment, is
Sure.
that there's gonna be 2.5% of payroll tax coming to the government. That
Yeah.
is my one thing, but
Yeah.
you and I've had that chat before about how other
again, I
stuff
mean,
works.
it partly answers the question of why would government do it? Government gets a benefit off of
Yeah.
making the pie bigger. I mean, how do we pay for healthcare? How do we pay for education? By having a strong economy. Moving this project forward right now, just as we come out of what they call the Great Recession, allows the Manitoba economy to stay strong.
Yeah.
And I think that's a healthy thing.
Okay.